right.
All right.
All right. This is Jesse.
And John.
And this is After the Gig. I know there's a bunch of new listeners this week. So in the last couple of weeks. So thanks for tuning in. Be sure if you have any questions, comments, or anything, email the podcast at afterthegigpod@gmail.com. If you want to check out the Patreon to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/afterthegig.
I feel like you can leave out the www at this point.
Yeah, probably.
In the world.
Yeah. All right. So patreon.com/afterthegig.
Boom. See, no one's going to get lost doing
Nailed
that.
it. Everyone's doing fine. I hear a ring.
I hear a ring too. I think it's the lights.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Because we're on the RV.
We're on the RV.
Right now.
We're in St. Paul, Minnesota. John's favorite place. And
I didn't know I disliked it so much until we parked, and then everyone is trying to kill us with their cars, and people are like literally getting over into the lane that we're unloading into to try and hit us.
There's like 3 cars coming down the street, one-way street, 3 lanes. We're in one of the lanes parked, and they're literally getting close to us.
They're trying to kill us.
They're trying to kill us.
So flipping rude.
So rude.
And then I went to Walgreens, and I was like, yo, St. Paul, you're falling apart at the seams, people. Apart.
This is actually, compared to when we played Turf Club, this is actually like halfway decent.
The club itself?
No, I like this club.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Cool.
You like
just the area, everything, the whole thing, the area. What's the name of this club, Doug? What's the name of the club?
Amsterdam Bar and Hall.
It's called Amsterdam Bar and Hall, and that's where we're playing tonight. Actually, in an hour and a half. So we're getting this together. Figure we'll answer some questions. John, did you have a good couple days off?
I'm tired.
It's funny how 2 days off can make you more tired than you were after 14 shows in the show.
It wasn't the days off that made me tired. It was the not sleeping on our days off that made me very tired. And I hate everybody right now.
Yeah. Well, you got up and you exercised.
I crushed my workout. Did you see me over there?
I did. You're crushing it, man.
Crushed it.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question from Katie Musselman.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Katie. I realized today while listening to After the Gig that you haven't... no, I'll leave that part out. Beyond music, what other creative outlets do you enjoy? And there's the second part. What is one surprising perk of being a touring musician? What is one surprising drawback? Okay, so creative outlets.
I mean, anybody that's listened to this knows mine.
Yeah, like jiu-jitsu,
boxing.
And I would count that in the creative lane for
It definitely is. I mean, it's the same approach to fighting.
Yeah. How you get your brain going.
Yeah, it's all technique and stuff like that.
Yeah. Mine, I don't know. I like to just play other instruments. Like I'm really into guitar right now. I've been into guitar for a while, but I like to do that. And I like to write in my spare time. And
I like eating cookies.
Eating cookies as well, which we did before we started. We were very nice and we didn't eat while we were talking. But also sports. I'm a huge sports guy. Really love sports. Love baseball. Kind of pissed that the Red Sox aren't in the playoffs this year.
Red Sox, is that basketball?
It's sports ball.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not in it. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. I guess it would be for us, since we're touring musicians, since we're musicians and we have a creative job already. It's like completely opposite. It's all like other stuff that we're into.
Yeah.
One surprising perk of being a touring musician, and a surprising drawback.
Well, the drawback, I mean, the perk is just like, you get to and not all musicians like touring. Actually, very few like touring that I know, at least. I know tons of musicians who are like, tour is a 4-letter word as far as I'm concerned, because it's really tough. I mean, it's like, you know, the emotional, just like roller coaster that tour is insane. And just like I said on the last podcast, I was like, who does it? Who goes as hard as we do? Like, I can't think of anybody that hits it as hard as we do. Yeah. And it's just like, I mean, the most exhausted, and you're like, I'm the most tired person ever right now. Yeah. And I have to stay up until 7 a.m. driving everyone. You know, it's just like, it's crazy.
And you don't realize how off the rails you are until it catches up with you.
Yeah. Until you get home and people are like, you look terrible. Terrible. Seriously, that's what people tell me all the time when I go home. They're like, normally you look young for your age, and right now you look old for your age.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. A thing that's surprisingly good is I really like talking to different people and like seeing different people throughout the country. I think that's pretty cool. Hey, Terry. And the drawback is just all like the lack of sleep, and then, you know, just every day constant. And then when you slow down, like having 2 days off, it was cool. Wasn't super restful couple of days off. Yeah. But then like,
and one was a full drive day, and the other one had a handful of work.
Yeah. But just like sitting there in bed, like even when you're in bed, just not really being able to sleep, just because, I don't know, you just have 14 days of craziness.
Last night, Jesse and I had a tossing and turning off.
Yeah.
Up until like 5 a.m.
Yeah. I think John won. I fell asleep first, apparently, which I don't remember.
That's the funny thing about falling asleep.
Don't really remember.
Don't remember it.
There was one time when there was no noise. I knew for a fact that you were awake, and you knew that I was awake, and then I farted.
and I went, good one, and you...
Thanks. That's pretty good.
That was funny.
I don't know. Did we answer that question?
There's nothing better than being able to do for a living what you sort of were put here to do.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that is just the, you know, even though it's, you know, has a lot of negative parts of it, kind of, there's nothing like, there's always that, like, at least I'm doing what I like doing, you know. I will say, oh, here comes the ice.
Here comes the ice.
Whoa. Yeah, gotta keep the Bud Lights cold.
That was good.
I will say the thing that I noticed just in life, that is the biggest downside of this is just the how not normal it is. I find that people will give you 2 chances to like hang out or go on a date or whatever it is. People normally be like, oh, you know, me and the boys are going out for burgers. Let's call John. And I'm like, they're like, hey, we're going out for burgers. And the first time I'm like, guys, sorry, I'm on tour right now. And then they ask again one more time. They're like, we're going out for burgers. And they sorry. It's 6:30.
Will you guys be ready?
You don't need to whisper.
Will you guys be early for the meet and greet potentially?
Oh boy. Okay,
so,
sure.
If we can, we could go early. If you guys aren't going to be ready,
I'll be ready.
We'll be ready.
This
is just an intro.
Not at 6:30 though. That's crazy.
6:30, but like
it's out of control.
Sure.
6:50 doable?
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally.
I'm just gonna take a shower and I'll be in.
I'll let the dudes know. 6:50
Cool.
is doable.
Yep. Can do.
Can do attitude.
See, we're out here on the road. Terry's just bossing us around.
Terry's about to get killed by the aforementioned
St. Paul driver.
St. Paul drivers getting out of the RV
None of
here.
them are saints. None of them are named Paul.
He said none of them are saints
And none of them
are
are
named Paul. But what I was saying was, your friends will ask you twice. I find, until they're just like, I'm not asking John to do it. It's not malicious, but it's just like,
Yeah.
we're not going to ask him to do anything anymore because he's probably not around. You know what I mean?
Dude, I get that all the time.
Totally.
All the time. Nobody calls me when I'm home because I'll be away. Exactly like you just said. They'll give you a couple chances and then that's it. And then you're stuck having to like call and like make all this effort when you get back and
Yeah.
you know.
And
that is definitely, that's a good answer. Surprising drawback.
Friendships fall apart very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And relationships, I mean, you're married, but I mean, I'm divorced. My girlfriend of 10 years just left me. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, it's, you know, at some point you put, to be able to do this, you put doing this first.
Yeah.
You know, this comes first in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that's hard for a lot of people, whether it's just friendships or romantic relationships or whatever. So
Yeah, and I was just about to mention having family at home. That's hard because you're in this kind of like fantasy world. You're traveling around, like your real life back home is going on, and there's things popping up. There's bills that need to be paid. There's, my wife has been commuting from Providence. Has been having like a tough time with the commute, and there's my wife. And there's nothing I can do about it, and it's a bummer. I feel like I feel helpless, like I can't do anything, and it sucks. And then that like festers in my mind. So that's like one of those things that you don't really think about before you leave, but when you're a couple weeks in, and then things start popping up, and then there's issues, and there's then it's like, oh man, like. This is crazy. You end up sitting in bed on a day off, just all these thoughts going through your head, and you can't fall asleep. So those are the tough parts. But yeah, that's a good. That was a good answer. That was a good question. Your answer, not mine. Mine was fine. That was okay.
No. Don't talk down on yourself like that. Your answer was fantastic.
So another question. I think. In the Carbon Leaf podcast, when you were all at the beach house, I think you and Barry touched on the idea of image control. How has image control evolved as social media has become more and more permanent, and therefore you have less control over your image because people can post whatever, pictures, videos, opinions that they want. I mean, it's you can do the best you can. There's no right or wrong way. There's people that are really good at it. There's people that aren't so good at it. Like
we're also like a mom and pop band, so we're just like, people want to come and take pictures. People want to send us emails. Send us emails. People want to whatever. It's like, go ahead.
The best way that we can control that is have control of our show and what we do on stage. Other than that, I mean, there's really no inside access other than you can email into the show or ask a question or whatever. There's not really, I don't know, that's a interesting question.
There's something weird about being, and I get it less just being the bass player of the band, but there's something weird about being someone that people see but don't know.
Yeah.
And I a long time ago, when I was in college, there was a class at my college. It was like the history of comic books or something like that. And this guy wrote it's almost like an encyclopedia in comic book form of the history of comic books. It was kind of fascinating. Mm-hmm. But one thing that he said, and he animated it as himself, so it was like himself as a comic book character, and he said, well, the reason people like comic books, or one of the reasons people like comic books so much, is because you have this picture. It's not a picture, it's a little cartoon, and you purposefully leave out tons of details in the cartoon itself so that people can read and say this happened, and they look at the pictures, people will naturally in their own minds fill in. Whoa, there goes my phone. People will fill in sort of their own shit into those spaces.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I think that happens with being a musician in a band that people like. People will literally look at you on stage and they'll go, okay, I don't, I'm only getting, 1% of this person's personality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding you. I get emails from people. I get, have conversations with people, and people will do things like, tell me what kind of person Barry Privet is, or tell me what kind of person Carter is, or they will like tell me like I don't know.
Yeah.
And they'll be way off most of the time.
Yeah.
Or they'll just like be like, oh yeah, oh, it must be so crazy just being on the road with Barry. He just must be like, just be like so nuts all the time. And I'm like, dude, he's the most business all the time person you've ever met. Like, you're way off.
Way off. Yeah. Well, even like bands that I grew up listening to and liking, you have this fantasy of either wanting to, like, as a musician, wanting to be up on stage and performing with them, or wanting to like hang with them, and you kind of come up with an idea of what they're like, and and it's the coolest versions of them, and hopefully it's true. But in that, we come to find out as we get older, and the more people we meet, the more we travel, it's not always the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I don't think you can really control. You can control as best as you can, or put out there whatever you want.
People are going to take what you say, and they're going to interpret it however they want. They're going to take what you put out into the world, and they're going to interpret it how you want. So the best thing to do, especially for us, we're not Garth Brooks, it's just like,
speak for yourself. Bro.
People are just, you do what you do, and people are gonna make their own stuff out of it. So why worry about it?
Yeah, you just try to do a good job. It's really all it is. Doug, be careful.
Careful, Dougie. There's lots of cars out there, and they're all mad. All right, I got to take a shower before this meet and greet.
This is perfect. So
I worked out so hard.
So on the podcast today, I have my good friend Joe Bentley. Joe Bentley is an upright bassist. Why? What's that smile on your face?
I was gonna make some stupid car joke, like, I don't know, call him Joe, like Pontiac Bentley car or something like
that. So Joe,
who does he play for?
He is he's a professor at URI, and he went to the Royal Conservatory in London for upright bass, and he's played in.
Oh, he's probably way better than me.
All kinds of like symphonies and stuff like that. But we've been friends for a long time.
I'm gonna have to kill him and take his powers.
Yep. Yeah.
There can only
he's
be
really
one.
He's big and he's strong. He works out just as much as you.
Doesn't know how to fight.
I don't think so.
The gauntlet is thrown.
Joe, watch out. No, on the show is Joe Bentley. We've known each other for a very, very long time. He's a great guy, and he has a lot of interesting stuff to say about the classical side of things and what it's like and what it takes to be a professional classical musician. And I hope you enjoy this conversation with my friend Joe Bentley.
Must be sweet to be a college professor. Upright bass player.
I think it's
professor.
Like associate professor.
Oh.
Kind of like professors at Berkeley, how they're all associate professors. You're not like...
I bet if the money's good, that's a dope gig.
It's probably a pretty sweet gig. Cool. But I know he teaches at Portsmouth Abbey and a few other places in Rhode Island. But fellow Rhode Islander Joe Bentley, enjoy the conversation. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Jesse. I love you.
Bye. See you next week. Well, that's interesting. You don't look like someone that uses hair growth products.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That means it's working.
Don't they have, is there like medical side effects to those things?
The ones that work really well, like I think it's Propecia. That's a pill.
Propecia is the one I think I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that has medical side effects because it like alters your body hormones to make you grow more hair.
Oh.
And I was reading about the side effects, and like some of the side effects are they're messed up. Like you can get
like loss of sex drive and stuff like that.
Gynecomastia, like you can grow boobs. Like you literally grow breasts. Like in some cases, you can have like depression, anxiety. It's crazy. It was like I was reading the side effects, and I was like, why would anybody take this?
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, no, it was kind of miserable. So Nioxin, it doesn't work. It's not quite as like aggressive. Mm-hmm. It takes a long time. It does work, but you have to stick with it for like, if you really want like that full head of hair, it's going to take like a solid 12 months. But the good thing is that it's kind of naturally, slowly regrowing. Whereas from what I've heard with like Rogaine and Propecia, apparently as soon as you stop taking it, like your hair, all the hair that you grew just falls out.
It just
falls
goes
back
away.
out. Yeah. So it's like, you know, at least I think with Nioxin, like the hair, even if you stop using it, it'll stay around for longer because it's naturally like waking up the hair follicles or something like that. Or at least that's the way Tom's explained it to me. So
if I lose my hair, I'm just going to be a guy with no hair.
Just be a bald dude.
I'm just going to be a bald guy.
Just do it. You got to do the comb over?
No. I mean, my hair is so thick. I think I'm in the clear.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'll go back. It'll just keep receding little by little, and my forehead will get bigger and
the high
bigger.
School fro.
The high school fro. which I kind of have right now.
I know.
Yeah. I've let my hair go a little bit, but I'm going to get it cut either today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hopefully. But
do you have a guy down here?
I don't. I will be going to my guy in Boston.
Oh, okay.
So,
because if you need a guy down here, I got a guy down here.
You got a guy?
John Richard Salon, brand streaker.
Okay.
He's one of my brother's friends. He does all this. He does like the hard part. I need a haircut, so it looks a little messy right now. But
looks good.
He does a really good good.
You always
haircut.
have very well, like clean cut haircut.
Dude, that's the Baptist. Seriously, like, have you ever like seen Baptist preachers? Perfect hair. Perfect. All of them have perfect hair. There was this one guy, Wendell Calder, and he was just like he was like a mannequin. He had like white, like beautiful, thick white hair, like this like perfect part. Every single day I saw him like down the side. It was just like, man, just like these Baptists, they know how to do these neat haircuts. So,
there's something about someone that has like really white hair, like perfect white hair.
Oh yeah,
it's such a cool look.
Yeah, right.
And so few people have it.
Like a thick head of white hair.
Thick head of white
it's
hair.
Like I hope I can be that old dude, but I'm just going to be like a weird bald dude with a funny shaped head.
I'm just going to be straggly, curly, grayish, weird hair. Like it's gonna go bad pretty quick for me.
Katie's big thing with me is she's like, Joe, you'd better never go bald because I know the shape of your head. I've got like the
you
point.
You don't have a weird shaped head.
Oh, dude,
turn. I mean, it just looks like a normal head.
Oh, that's because the hairstyle. That's why. Because that's why I do the hair this.
Because the hair shapes
the hair because I've got a point at the top, so I flatten it out and I kind of raise it up front so it makes the point less pronounced. Dude, I got moles all over my head.
So does everybody.
It's like, oh, dude, I got an ugly dome.
I have a weird shaped head because, like, if like my head obviously goes around on the top and then it's just fucking flat, like completely flat in the back.
Like a wrestler's head.
Yeah. It just looks like I fell on the ground like a bunch of times in a row and it flattened out the back of my head. So Joe.
So Jesse.
One of my oldest friends.
Yes.
It's kind of funny that Eric Hansen's podcast just came out and now you're here. In Providence. You are the first interview in my new apartment in Providence.
Yes, breaking the ice.
It's pretty good. What do you think so far?
The apartment, I really like it. We've got some beautiful exposed brick.
Exposed brick.
A little bit of a hipster vibe here. It's kind of cool.
Yep. There's a cable that is not, that's going to bother me. That coax cable.
It's not managed.
It's not managed properly.
Nope.
And it needs to be hidden, but...
we got some nice granite countertops. We got stainless steel appliances.
Marble.
Is it marble?
Yeah, marble?
Jesse, you fancy bastard.
I mean, I didn't buy it.
But no, I think the apartment looks great. Like I love to play nice hardwood floors and everything. It's like a classic old Providence house that's been redone with all new drywall.
1877 was
Really?
when this house was built.
Wow.
1877.
Yeah.
That's one of the cool things about Providence is like most of the houses around here have little plaques on them, and it says who designed it and what year it was built.
Yeah, all
And
the
they're
historic houses.
They're all in the 1800s.
Danny Amendola used to live in one from the Patriots.
Really?
Yeah, he lived in one on Benefit Street. He literally, he lived in...
While he was playing for the Patriots?
While he was playing for the Patriots. Because Foxborough is, really only 35, 40 minutes from here.
Yeah.
So he lived, there was a house on Benefit Street. I had friends who saw him at, coffee shops and stuff around Providence. And
well, that makes sense, because Olivia Culpo, his girlfriend, or ex, I don't know if they're still together, but she was from Cranston.
Her mother, Olivia Culpo, Susan Culpo, is a violist. I play with her.
Really?
Yeah, I've played with her at Wheaton College. I've played with her at where else have I played with her at a bunch of places.
Olivia also plays cello, I think, or violin or something.
I think so.
I've seen them on Instagram, performing together and stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
Yeah. Crazy world. Lots of smells. I'm watching through The Office. That's where that came from.
So, what? You're a classical upright bassist, or
Yes.
double bassist.
Classical double bassist. Yes.
What? So in high school, let's give a little context. You were all about electric bass, slap bass, Les Claypool, just stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what made you take the turn and the deep dive into classical music?
So
maybe take us through your mentality and what you enjoyed about, when you first started playing bass, because you started playing late.
Yeah, I started
Very
playing.
late.
I started. I couldn't read music. I taught myself bass guitar at the age of 13 is when I started playing bass guitar, and I sat down and I listened to Green Day and Rage Against the Machine's first album. That was my big one. Was listening through Rage Against the Machine's self-titled album, and I remember the first summer I played bass, I just played through that album over and over and over again, because it was just I couldn't get enough of it, and I still can't. It's to me it's one of the perfect albums that's ever been made. So I started off there.
So you haven't lost your love for
No,
for
dude,
that.
I listen to heavier stuff now than I ever used to. I listen to, for me, it's been, I listen to a weird mix. So it's been a lot of Meshuggah, a lot of heavy
Really?
stuff. Dude, I love Meshuggah now. And Corey Wong and Wolfpack.
Dude, that's great.
It's so joyful, his music, So so I started off as the self-taught bass guitarist, and I went through high school, and I never really had an interest in learning to read music, because I was all I kind of wanted to do my own thing.
Well, you weren't in band or anything.
No, because honestly, reading music scared me.
Yeah.
It really did. I was afraid of reading music. I was afraid of jazz band because I was afraid of jazz. I was afraid of all these other things that I couldn't do because I had my little bubble. And also I felt hey, I'm pretty good at what I do. I don't want to do something I'm not good at. So I go through high school, and I'm just slapping the bass and doing bass solos and playing way too much all over the place, and just shredding at every possible opportunity, which is the bass player's oh my god, you give me a scarlet letter for that, as a bass player. So and it's funny because before I go into where the change came from, one of the things that my journey, I suppose, as a classical musician taught me about myself was the things that I really enjoy about music, or about making music. The precision has kind of a lot to do with it, really getting it right, and that's not so much a musical thing for me as it is just a general thing for me, with home improvements. I don't like to do a project on my house that I can't do really right.
Right.
I don't like kludging things.
Yeah.
I don't I'd rather take my time and do it, even if it takes too long. And Katie's kind of mad at me. Sorry, Katie, if you're listening. I'll get the basement done eventually.
This decade.
Yeah, right. Sometime, hopefully this decade. But I'd rather really, I'd rather take my time with it, and and make sure that when I look at it, it's done right, or at least to the best of my possible ability, you know, and not kludge it. So I kind of discovered that about myself through the process of learning classical music. And also the thing that I like about practicing in a classical context is and this is a good parallel for the way I used to play, was it's all about technique.
Yeah.
It's all about refining your technique. So you're looking in the mirror, you're taking videos of yourself, you're recording yourself, and you are analyzing every little thing about your playing. Your hand structure on your left hand, the posture of your left elbow, exactly how you're holding your hips while you sit on your seat, where you put your legs in relation to your bass. You know, the bow grip is a whole new, I mean, once I started really learning how to use the bow, it's like this world of technique. It's just like this really microscopic view into how you approach your instrument, and it's so thorough and it's so detailed, and that's the thing that I eat up.
And the very little thing I know about classical technique on an upright bass, which is next to nothing. There's the German grip and the French grip. Are there other different ways? Are there hybrids?
There are hybrids. There's one guy that I know, a South African guy named Ruan Bartman, who is just a phenomenal bass player. If you can find him on Instagram, he doesn't post a ton of his playing on Instagram, but he's just, man.
Where's he from?
He's from, I don't want to get the city wrong, but I know he's from one of the bigger cities in South Africa. I mean, I'm going to guess Johannesburg, but I can't be sure. But he grew up in South Africa, and I met him in London, and he used a hybrid grip where it was, the bow itself was a hybrid bow. So it's halfway between a French bow and a German bow, but he held it like a German bow. And that allowed him, because the frog, I know we're getting a little technical here, but the frog, like the ebony part on a bow for a German bow, is really wide. And the frog on a French bow is very narrow.
So is the difference the actual bow or the way that you hold the bow?
Both.
It's both.
Yeah, it's both. So the German bow, because the frog is wide enough, the frog actually fits into, or the heel of the bow, fits into the palm of your hand, so you can hold it underhanded. The French bow, that you hold it basically just like a violin. It looks just like a violin bow. You hold it overhand just like a violin bow. And the only difference is that violinists, they put their pinky on the right hand on the end of the bow, whereas bassists usually don't, because you need a little bit more power when you're playing
Interesting.
bass. So yeah, the thing that I appreciated in hindsight was this really microscopic attention to detail, and I've discovered about myself that I like to do that with everything that I do.
Was that always, even in high school? Because I mean, I have a specific memory of us in like the lunchroom in high school, and you were explaining like offensive blocking to me when we were playing football, and just the way that you did it, I was like, oh, I can get by. And I consider myself, or I used to consider myself, a pretty athletic dude, and I just like tried to get by you, and the way that you were doing was like, no. It was just like very, very technical, and very much like, there was no way I was getting by you.
Because it's funny. I look back on it, and me explaining anything about football is a goddamn laugh. Cause
no, but the way, what I mean is like the way that you approached it was from this like, this is what I have learned, this is what I know, and I am using that exact method that I have learned, and I'm going to try to perfect this and do it right.
Yeah, that is true. And that's it's funny because I didn't think about myself like that in high school. I didn't think like I'm a method guy, or I didn't think of myself as an attention to detail type of person. Yeah. Really until later on in my life. Okay. And that's when I realized like, oh, I really enjoy this. I enjoy getting things right. I didn't get it, which is why I wasn't a good student, because I didn't get it. Yeah, that's what I liked. Right. And once it clicked for me, like, oh, attention to detail, getting things right, this is satisfying. This is something that I enjoy this process. Then I became a really good student, and then I started, making gains in my playing and everything. But so that's some of the things that I found out about myself in the process. But that's not where the change came from. So the changeover from like my rock and roll roots to being a professional classical musician.
Well, even before that, like when like after high school, how much were you playing in bands? I remember you and I were in a band. Yeah. And then, which wasn't super serious, but then you played in that band Vega
So I never told you the story about what happened with Vega, did I? About like how I ended up not being in the band anymore?
You know, I feel like you may have alluded to it at one point, but I feel like it had something to do with some morality to it. Or
that was big. So when I was in Vega and we were partying, and it was, the lead singer Nate was just he was awesome. He was a great friend, a really, really good person. But and he was a party animal. He loved to party.
Well, you guys were like what, 19?
Yeah, 18, 19. I don't even know if we were 20 yet. And Nate is now like a model in New York City. That dude is like killing. He's like absolutely shredded. He's like I think he models for like Abercrombie or something.
Really?
Like that. Yeah, he's like one of those dudes.
Wow.
And when I met him, it's funny, he was in the process of like packing on muscle to become one of those dudes. So we were we were partying, and we were drinking, of course, underage, whatever. You do it sometimes. And
all the time.
That's when, around that time, I had met my ex-girlfriend, who brought me to a Baptist church.
Okay.
So I went to this Baptist church, and I became really involved with this church. And I was born again. I raised my hand, I got saved, I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior, everything, whole 9 yards. And I was still playing in the band at this time, and I specifically remember the pastor's wife having a conversation with me, because we were about to go on tour. Mm-hmm. And we were about to drive. We had like bought a van and everything. We were about to go around, the eastern side of the country. And I think all the way out to somewhere in the Midwest. Like, it's been a while, I can't remember. But I remember, as I was telling my pastor and my pastor's wife about this, I specifically remember my pastor's wife saying to me, "Joe, what do you think the children would think of their Sunday school teacher playing with a rock band?"
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's how she said it. And it was like, so it was this tinge of disappointment. Like,
Right.
this is the devil's music. This is not right. This is that, or at least that's how it was presented to me, was this style of music is somehow illegitimate because it's worldly. That's really what it was all about.
Yeah.
So I was convinced at that time, and again, this is my sort of, in hindsight, my attention to detail and wanting to do things right. With that,
wanting to do things right and according to what she is telling you,
wanting to do things correctly.
Okay.
To the T.
Would you say that's how you feel about that kind of music now?
No, absolutely not. That was and I never really truly bought it. That
right.
Because it is a lie that rock and roll is the devil's music. Come on, what? Do you know the sordid things that classical musicians have done? Jeez, there's some dudes.
Yeah, so, we're all human. We're all imperfect, and if if someone were to say that to me, and I'm not saying that these people are bad people or anything, but I would just be like, why? Like, what? Why?
See, and this is the thing, and it's like, I know this is obviously not a religion podcast, but it's part of the story here. And this is the thing about being born again and being an evangelical Christian, is that it really is a complete rejection of the world and anything that resembles the world. That's specifically in like the American evangelical movement. So, back to the band and everything. Before I start talking about things that are above my pay grade, I was convinced at that time, because of my relationship with the church and how much I was doing at the church, really, really quickly, which is kind of a strategy that evangelicals have, is they get you saved and then they get you doing as much as possible to kind of get you in the fold. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a ton of work at the church, mm-hmm. and I became convinced that if I went on tour, I would be disappointing my church. I'd be disappointing my kids in Sunday school. So my next band practice, I was conflicted. I literally, I was in tears at my band practice, because I was like, I have to quit. Yeah. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore.
What did they have to say about it?
I think they were probably taken aback at
confused.
They didn't get it. Yeah, they didn't quite understand.
Well, it's a hard thing to get.
Oh yeah, and I don't say that like, oh, they didn't get it, like it's their fault. I say like, who would understand that decision?
Yeah,
who would, like, realistically. So I left the band, and they were, justifiably upset with me, because we didn't have that much time to train a replacement. And they found a replacement, and they ended up going on tour and being successful. But at that time, the reason why this took me into classical music is because there was this view within the church that, like, you know, rock and roll is evil, hip hop is evil, anything that sounds like the world is you know, basically, you know, of the devil because it's of the world. But classical music, that is pure, you know, classical music, that is, you know, that's somehow better morally, which is like, I mean, I never, again, that's one of those things I never really kind of swallowed, but I was like, all right.
It's like all of these things were created after, like, you know, Jesus never said anything about, you know,
there's no
Buddy
right,
Holly.
There's no right style of music. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
just an expression of human kind, of human culture and experience.
Yeah, and you know, the idea of putting a moral bent on what style of music is better than another, it's one of those things where, wow, what a change, because now it's like I can't imagine saying that one style of music is better. And luckily, when I was in the church, I was able to kind of convince them. They didn't even allow electric instruments.
Wow.
Like, at first, I couldn't bring my bass guitar in until, you know what I did? I went in and I convinced the pastor to let me play Victor Wooten's Amazing Grace in church. So I did that. I played Amazing Grace in church, and they were like, oh,
this instrument's fine now.
right. Yeah. So I kind of had to do a little bit of convincing to let them be like, all right, guys, you know, electric instruments aren't bad.
Yeah.
So
It's like you guys are using electricity in here.
right. It's like,
This thing just has strings on it.
yeah, it's just, so that was just a really kind of, and yeah, it was really, in hindsight, kind of a strange way to get to where I am now. But one of, you know, there were some good things about the whole evangelical Christianity, and my conversion was that, you know, when you're an evangelical, it's really a lot about self-discipline. It's about that Protestant work ethic. Like, you know, if something doesn't happen, it's because you haven't worked hard enough. So when I picked up my bass, I would just practice and practice and practice and practice, because I was convinced that was like the right thing to do, the moral thing to do.
Yeah. I remember, I specifically remember you going through this thing, and we might have like lost touch a little bit through that time.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
And then would you say that happened with a lot of people you knew?
Oh yeah, and it was in part due to the church and the teachings that, you know, you should reject the world. A lot of it had to do with my ex-girlfriend, because, you know, when I became a Christian and I started, you know, and I started really kind of getting into the fold, she would tell me things like, you know, you shouldn't hang out with your old friends anymore because you're a new person. You know, you shouldn't hang out with your brother anymore because, you know, he's not the kind of person that a Christian should be hanging out with.
Damn.
You know, you shouldn't hang out with your old bandmates. And it was that it said that's some things about the relationship that were, you know, I mean, that were obviously unhealthy, you know?
Right.
So a lot of
but
it...
as like an 18, 19-year-old kid, you know, you would be susceptible or go into this thing, or you're searching for something that you belong to or that you want, you know. I can understand, I feel like coaxed is the wrong word, but
it's a little bit of coercion.
Yeah, I can understand
spiritual
being
coercion, yeah.
coerced into living that life and doing that kind of thing, and how it would seem, how it would be, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Attractive.
Yeah. Well, because there's, you know, some of the kindest and sweetest people and best people I've ever met have been in this church.
Of course,
you know, they're great people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's the attractive part, is like there's this great community of wonderful, nice people, but in order to get in, you have to give up everything. Or at least that's what I thought. You know, that's what I was convinced. And I think my ex-girlfriend had a lot to do with the convincing. But, you know, at the time, I bought it. You know, I really did. I subscribed to it. So I, you know, kind of hook, line, and sinker. And I started... you know, no longer having contact with my friends. So that included you. That included my own brother, not hanging out with my brother anymore. Not spending too much time at family parties because there was alcohol there. You can't be around alcohol, you know?
Yeah. How long would you say this all went on for? How many years?
Boy, how many years was it? So I want to say my real, like, fervent, zealous belief was probably about 4 or 5 years, I'd say. So that's
a long time.
Yeah, it was. And eventually I started to so what happened was, you know, I had the relationship with the ex, and that was bad, and that exploded, and that was, you know, that ended kind of really it was really ugly. And she left the church and I stayed. And through that, I kind of, and this is where it starts to turn around.
She left the church and you stayed.
I stayed, and she left.
Interesting.
Because there were, she made some mistakes that were really, kind of not so great. Mm-hmm. And I think she didn't really feel comfortable being there anymore, and that's the people make. I made mistakes in that relationship.
Of course.
So,
Well, yeah. I mean,
so she left. I stayed because I was working in the church, and I really felt strongly about, I had accepted it fully. So I was, really in love.
This was the place that you belonged.
Yeah, I was really, and at that point, beyond all the spiritual coercion, I really was in love at that point. Really was truly in love with Jesus Christ, and truly in love with, the structure of the church and doing something great that would be pleasing to God. That's what I was really in love with. So this relationship breaks up, and then I stay in the church, and I'm still playing, and I'm still making music. And, at that point, my religious stuff starts to change a little bit, because now it's becoming, less about what box do you need to fit in, more about what are your own beliefs? What's your own relationship with Jesus or with the church or whatever. So eventually I'm ironing that out. And then I meet Katie, my now wife. And, she is like, I don't know how well you know Katie, but she's like she's so funny.
Thing is, I think I've only hung out with Katie maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times. Because I came to your house when we were playing, when Ryan, you and I were doing that gig, and saw Katie. She seems like such a sweet girl, such a nice girl.
She's a sweetheart, but
there's a but.
Big but. Her little, and this is like, I say that jokingly because she's like, she was the bad influence on all of her friends in high school.
Yeah.
And she would say this.
This is who you belong with.
Right.
You
exactly.
need the bad influence.
I needed it. So
I'm the bad influence. She's a bad influence.
That's right. Because, I kind of jokingly say that because Katie's whole thing is, just you need to accept who you are. She's a clinical therapist. So it's like, in hindsight, that's what she makes a great therapist, because she's really good at getting people to just kind of accept who they are.
Do you guys still have that fake bunny?
We have a real bunny.
I know you have a real bunny, but I remember. Sorry to totally derail. Wasn't there like a fake bunny, like a therapy bunny?
Oh, that was so we had a therapy cat. We had a therapy. So this was actually
a fake cat.
This was an animatronic goddamn cat that would like meow when you scratched it, and that would like kind of half roll over and it was like a Furby.
Okay. I will never forget that thing,
dude. It
freaked me out a little bit.
It was like from the depths of hell. It
was really fun.
It was. So yeah.
So Katie, yeah.
So Katie, yeah. Well, and through meeting her and like getting out of this really kind of unhealthy relationship, I was able to kind of develop, a little bit more sense of myself and who I am and what my relationship is with the church and with Jesus and what are my own, beliefs and everything about this. And through that, I started to find my own identity as a musician.
Okay.
Because
the one through line through this whole thing was music and playing the bass, because you never stopped doing that.
Yeah. No, and what's funny is a long time ago, this is back in high school, I remember having the thought that playing the bass is literally the only thing that I really feel called to do.
I had the same thought about playing drums and playing music. I didn't. I have plenty of friends now from high school in particular that are either doctors or successful in the finance industry. Nick Matarisi is killing it at Google. Absolutely. And it's like,
I got to tell you about that when I met up with him in London, by the way, but go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's natural to feel some sort of jealousy towards those people, or some, you're like, oh man, why can't I?
Yeah, success, money, stability.
Yeah, it's that whole thing. Yeah. But I can't even, and I'm so happy that they found these things and they're successful. And it takes some growing up to do to feel good about those people succeeding.
Yeah.
And to make it be like, oh wow, congratulations, I feel good about it and I'm not jealous.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes time to do that, and it's an important lesson to learn.
Yeah.
But the one thing that is constant is I couldn't do those jobs. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't have the life I have now. Like, it's just, I would rather struggle to like make my own thing happen and like invest in myself.
Yep.
and figure out navigating life and stuff like that, being a musician, than go into something that I wouldn't enjoy.
Right.
I mean, I want money and stuff. I like fun toys and like everybody, like most people do. Some people don't,
who doesn't?
But I just like what I do so much more than trying to fit into someone else's box or whatever.
Yeah, no.
That's what she said. That whole thing was a setup.
That's what she said, of the century. Oh my God, that's good. Yeah, and it's so yeah. I mean, and that's the thing about being an artist of any type, is that you have to be so flexible, and you have to be so willing to, in some cases, make changes to your own life,
right?
Because you don't really get to have a routine. You don't really get to have. You don't really get to have a sense of consistency that you might have with one of those really stable office jobs, but the trade-off is that you get to be part of something great. You get to make art, you get to make music,
Yeah, you get to constantly flex your creative muscles. And I've had friends that relationships didn't work out because one of the two people wanted consistency, wanted the other person to have a 9 to 5, and it just was not that person's goal, and it ruined and wrecked a relationship.
And this is one of the things I'm so lucky with Katie, is that she is.
We got to get back. We got to get back to Katie.
We got to get back to Katie.
I jump around a lot.
So yeah, we got it. So one of the great things about Katie is that she has accepted that that I got a weird schedule, and that I gotta work like nights and weekends. I can't go to family parties. Like, I've had to miss weddings and stuff. I've had to miss all sorts of things. And she's a trooper, and she'll go to the stuff alone. And when her family's asking, "Hey, where's Joe?" Like, she'll tell them, "Oh, he's working. He's on a gig."
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that can be hard for her, because she does have an office job. She has a 9 to 5. So her expectations for her life have a sense of consistency to them. I'm lucky, whereas I found a place where I can be creative and I can make lots and lots of music and I can do lots of different things and still have a house and still like have a sort of routine.
Right.
So luckily I feel like I'm in this sweet spot now, that a lot of it is directly because of Katie. And when I met her, helping me find myself, and who I am and all that stuff.
Well, finding the balance between the person that you are and the person that you're learning to be, or the person that you became when you were in the church and when you were in this, bad relationship. Getting out of that thing is hard, and not everybody finds the Katie, or in my case Genevieve, who will get you out of,
who will put up with your garbage until you so much garbage that Katie has to put up with.
So much garbage.
So I had, a few months ago, back in March, I played a concerto with an orchestra, and poor Katie, she had to listen to me practice. And there's this one note. There's a high C on the bass. And in order to make a good sound that high on the bass, this is like for any bass players who are listening, that's like, right at the end of the fingerboard and the Bottesini harmonics. Sorry, speaking French, whatever. I don't know if there's any classical bassists listening. Duh. The Bottesini harmonics, whatever. So anyway, it's a really high note. In order for it to...
Dorian, Mixolydian.
Yeah, right,
Lydian.
There's a joke in there about a hurricane being upgraded to a major storm and having to become Ionian. So like I'm practicing this, and there's this high C. And in order for it to sound good, you have to spend a lot of time playing up there, because you just have to get comfortable.
Right.
I can't tell you how many thousands of times I practiced this high passage with that high C. And Katie is sitting there on the couch like 20 feet away from me. She's like, Joe, can I have my sound canceling headphones?
Yeah.
She's just like, listen to me practice. Or it's like, there's a couple years ago where I was playing Rite of Spring with an orchestra. And I don't know if you know that piece, but like the last movement of it is all mixed meter. So it's all like 5 8 7 8 3 8 4 4. I personally
don't know the piece, but
dude, it's the last page. The last page of the last movement is like it doesn't have the same time signature 2 bars in a row at all. For like the last I want to say 100 or so bars of the piece, it's constantly changing.
Man, is that just something you have to memorize?
You can't memorize it. I couldn't because it's too much. Like I had to.
How do you even start?
Slowly, really slow. But like I was literally, so Katie had to listen to me. Like I'd have the metronome on, as much as you can with something that's mixed meter, and I'd be practicing with it, and I'd be like clap, 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 clap. Shit, clap, 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 clap. God damn it! Like, I'd be like swearing, and there have been times where Katie like literally recorded me doing that and posted it on Instagram because it's like so absurd.
Yeah,
but that's what she has to deal with. She has to deal with me making noise at home and like playing the bass at like all ungodly hours, which I try not to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I guess back to the journey, question of like the life story. I meet Katie.
Just don't stop believing, man.
Don't stop believing.
That's the journey.
That's what it's about. But yeah, so I meet Katie, and she breaks me out of my shell a little bit, and then it got to a point where my relationship with the church, and I was a music podcast. I'm talking so much about church, but that's part of it.
Yeah. Everybody's experience is different.
Right. And so I get to a point where I was doing so much with the church. I was singing in the adult choir. I was leading a teen choir. I was playing special instrumentals. This is like bass solos every single week. I was doing prelude. And I was also playing in the praise band. This is 5 things, and I wasn't getting paid for any of it. Wow. And I was in school full time, and I was working like 30, 35 hours a week.
Jesus, Joe.
It was too much. It was way too much. So I got to a point where I quit the church for a little bit. I was so overwhelmed. It's like, I don't even know. I don't know if it was, I wouldn't call it a breakdown because I definitely didn't have it wasn't like a nervous breakdown, but my relationship with Katie for a little bit because of all that stress wasn't great. So I met somebody else. I broke up with Katie, started dating somebody else for 3 months. And I
didn't know that happened.
Yeah, I had like a whole other girlfriend for 3 months. Katie and I were split up, because the relationship wasn't going great because of all the stress I was under. And then that didn't work out. But I took some time off from the church because it was like I'm doing too much. I'm doing way too much.
I feel like I remember that time. Like we might have met up once. It was like the first time we had met up in a while, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm taking a break from all that." Or that's kind of. Was this while you were in college?
Yes. This is while I was in college.
At this point, you were in London.
No, this is Rhode Island College. This is when I was undergrad. This is before, yeah.
Okay.
So when I was in undergrad, I broke up. Me and Katie broke up, and this is like I want to say 2010 roundabout. And this is, I kind of started, pulling away from the really hardcore beliefs of the church, and I started kind of accepting, myself and my own, musical desires, my own artistic desires more so. But at this time, I was also practicing a lot because I had grad school auditions coming up because I had to make sure. I was like, all right, I wanted to be a professional classical musician, but I felt like I need more training than what I have.
So you're working hard as a classical musician, but you're also having like an internal crisis of coming from the church and trying to accept the old, like the music that you were told for so long to not listen to or not accept.
Yeah. And I never fully rejected it.
Okay.
I never fully, like deep down, I never fully thought that like rock and roll was the devil's music.
Yeah,
I never really thought that.
You would just be sitting in the bathroom and like listening to Primus on your headphones. Like, this is my time for 5 minutes every morning.
Like getting my fix,
Yeah,
it's like in a dark room at night.
Joe, what are you doing in there? I'm taking a dump.
It's not porn. It's not porn. So yeah, so like I eventually
I can't believe it. I walked in on Joe listening to Primus today.
Of all things. Dude, I saw them with Mastodon last year.
Oh, that must have been incredible.
Insane show.
I love Wes Claypool. I think he's I don't even know if he's underrated or overrated, but I think he's incredible.
I think I am very glad with how rated he is.
I think he's just right where he should be.
Yeah.
People that know him know he's the boss.
Yeah, know? Right. He's like, and the thing is, there's nobody like Les Claypool.
There's nobody like him.
Nobody else like him.
Nobody plays like him. Nobody looks or sounds like, it's just he's very unique.
He really is the ultimate artist, because he's full acceptance and expression of himself, no matter how weird that is.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
That's what I think is great. So yeah, I'm I'm doing all the practicing. I'm having this like crisis of faith. I'm having this crisis of religion, and I'm trying, and I end up breaking up with the other girlfriend, and then Katie and I are not quite back together yet. And then I'm doing my grad school auditions, and then I get accepted to the Royal Academy of Music, and that's where I go. I'm like, holy crap, I got accepted. Which is a big deal. Yeah, and I auditioned for that school as a laugh. I didn't expect to get in. I did not expect. I was like, I'm not good enough for this, but whatever, I'll do it. And same thing with like, I didn't even think of auditioning for Juilliard, because I was like, come on, man. Like, I'm not going to get in there. So like, I just didn't even bother. I auditioned for a couple other places, got accepted, got waitlisted a couple other places. But then I got my acceptance for the Royal Academy of Music, and I was floored. It was like when I went to Bass at the Beach back in like 2005. It was like I had the same reaction. I was like freaking out. It was amazing, man. So I tell Katie, and she's not that happy, because she knows that means I'm going to be going away.
So is that 2 years?
Yeah, a 2-year master's program.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a long time to be away. But you didn't come home that much.
No, I came home like once every few months. I would come home because at the term breaks. But Katie and I,
it's expensive, and
yeah. And I the thing is, I didn't have the money to fly back. It was either Katie or my parents that had to buy my tickets. And this is Katie like shelled out a lot of money for me to fly back and forth. So we got back together before before I left for London, and we did long distance for 2 years.
Wow.
And it was hard. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've done, is being in a long distance relationship, while being in a really, really intense school environment, with just kind of very few outlets.
Yeah. I did long distance with my high school girlfriend for like, it was a couple of years. And, then I moved to Boston, and it was just it's too much. It's too hard. It's at a young age. You were a little bit older.
Yeah, I was mid-20s, because I was an idiot, and it took me 6 years to finish undergrad. So,
dude, I mean, you do what you got to do. That was hard. It was really hard, because you're trying to do everything you can. You're not really who you are, and when you're that young,
you don't know yet.
You're an idiot.
Yep.
And it just wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to either one of us to go on doing this thing while you want to experience college. You want to go have a good time and not have to worry about anything.
Yeah, you feel like
it's always a bummer about
you want to meet people. You want to see where things will lead, and you don't want to feel also tied back to the place that you were before. You don't want to feel like you have to go back.
Right. You want to move forward, and not to say that a person. I mean, I guess in that situation, a person can hold you back from things, from certain experiences, and like, what if you stayed out later that night and you met like the next band leader of your next gig or whatever, and you got to hang out and play, and something magical happened, and it's just you have to leave yourself open for opportunities at that age.
For me, I felt like the only thing that like being long distance prevented me from doing was sleeping around.
Yeah.
Because the thing with that is like, thank God, because I got no game, man. I got none.
No game.
I got none at all. I would have, dude. It would have been a mess if I was dating while I was in grad school. Like, there were people that were in relationships that were like, it was so messy because I think there was a girl who was dating, one of the other members of her string quartet. And like when they broke up, then the string quartet broke up, and that stuff can get really stressful. But the good thing, what it allowed me to do, is because I wasn't thinking about dating, I was like, I'm just going to practice.
Yeah,
I'm just going to work.
And speaking of practice, we're talking about practice. practice at a music school is like nothing anyone has ever experienced.
Nope.
It's a completely different thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you are not doing what these other people are doing, you should just drop out.
Oh, totally.
You can't if you can't, like, if you're not in the practice room trying to get better and better and better, there are kids in the practice room all day long. If they're not in class, they're practicing 4-6 hours a day.
Yep.
A day.
Yep.
Just slowing things down, getting things perfect, getting everything right. And I remember how much you would talk about how much you were practicing. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, shit, I'm not practicing nearly that much. Like what? And I was definitely slacked in that department for a long time. But, you know, there's only so much your natural ability can get you.
Oh yeah. There's only, because like there's a point where you can over practice. You know, you can do too much. And
Well, when practice turns into just like you're not getting anything actually done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to constantly be stretching the muscles, and then, you know, you're breaking down the muscles and you build them back up.
Yeah,
Break
you
it
need
down,
rest.
build it back up.
You do. You need rest. Your brain needs rest. But speaking about the kids, like in practicing in the conservatory environment being different, I got a story for you. I remember there were two rooms where we kept all of our basses, and there were like, you know, there were some spots where you could, you know, lean the basses against the wall, and there were some basses in cases. I mean, there were these two big rooms. So the bass players, we used to practice in these big rooms, but that means everybody else would be walking in and out getting their basses. I remember one time I was practicing. I was like, I don't know. I was in like the first session of my 2 hour a day sessions at the time, which was like recommended 4 to 6 hours a day. You know, at a place like that, that's what you're supposed to do. So I was in my first session, and one of the other students walks in while I was not really practicing. I was just kind of like playing some jazz stuff on my bass. I was just kind of messing around. And he goes, "Why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Why are you wasting your time?" And he's got this really, like, you know, he's British guy, so he's got
Smug look on his face.
really like snobby, like London accent.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm just I was like kind of thinking, like, why do I have to justify myself to you?
Right.
And he's like, you know, it's like, you're wasting your time. That's never going to get you a job. And like, he just looked me dead in the eye and said that. And he's like, you shouldn't be practicing that. And then he then he walked out.
What'd you take from that?
He was a dick. That's what I took from that. Like don't. I'm gonna swear, so don't fucking comment on somebody else's practicing. If you don't have anything constructive to say, keep your fucking mouth shut.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, man. That's rude. That is really rude.
It is rude. It's like,
Dude,
this is my private time.
If you're listening and you know who you are, that was a dick move.
Yeah.
I know we're friends, but that was a dick move.
Yeah, Hans. I bet your name's Hans.
Yeah, I bet his name's Hans. Nah, but it's like, but you know, but people do stuff like that, you know, in conservatories. Like, I remember my first interaction with one.
That's a competitive thing.
Oh, totally.
That's just trying to put you down. So he's just playing head games.
Yeah. And I remember, and this is actually a big, kind of a big difference between European schools of bass playing and the American school of double bass playing, is that Americans, we require solo Bach on all of our auditions. So you have to play a movement or two from one of Bach's cello suites. You know, really difficult. They require a lot of practice. And the thing is, they don't always sound good on the bass because they weren't written for the bass. But Americans, we like to play it. That's something that we require. Europeans generally don't have that requirement on their auditions. So when I walked into this school as an American bass player playing Bach, I remember, you know, I was talking to one of the guys on my very first day, and, you know, he was asking me what I was playing, what I was working on, and I mentioned I was working on, you know, at the time I was working on one of the movements from the 6th cello suite, and he was, you know, he rolled his eyes and he goes, "Oh, you Americans, you love your Bach." And he was like, you know, we don't really do that here. And I was like, all right, geez.
Like, all right.
It's like, welcome to London, motherfucker. It was like, that's how it felt, you know? So
I just don't understand it. It's like, you didn't write it. It was written hundreds of years ago.
What do you care? You know?
It's like, what do you care?
But I also don't want to make it sound like, the people were terrible over there, because honestly, like the bass players, with the exception of like those two interactions that I just named, like those were by far the exception to the rule. The other bass players, like the other students there, were awesome. They were like, There's this one guy, Andre. Andre, if you're listening, I love you, man. Andre was like, he's playing. I think he's subbed in with the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. He's playing with, I can't. It's a big long German name, the orchestra that he's in now. But he was just like, he's this Romanian guy that was discovered, I think, by Vladimir Ashkenazy, the famous pianist.
Wow.
And he was touring, and somehow Andre got to play for Ashkenazy. And Ashkenazy, I hope I'm getting this right. I think it's Ashkenazy. Decided to fund his education.
Wow.
Yeah, and paid for all of his education and got him a full scholarship to the school. And this guy was just like, he could speak 5 languages, and he was just the nicest, kindest.
Yeah.
Like, he was like a big teddy bear.
Just a special person
Yeah,
that people
and
wanted to be around.
He just loved playing the bass.
Yeah.
And pretty much everybody was that to some degree. Pretty much everybody just wanted to play the bass and make music. You know, that's the great thing about the bass players is that we're lucky. We usually got a pretty cool contingent, like wherever we are. It was a little different in the violins and the cellos, and I think some of the winds. Like I think there was a little bit of tension in the trumpet players.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of attention?
Oh, just just competition, competitiveness.
Okay.
But mostly it was mostly with the violinists. I've had some friends that really, really were in kind of in a rough way in that school. I had one friend who's a violin teacher. She was a Asian American girl, and her young woman, not girl, and her teacher was Chinese, and he would always tell her that you're too fat, like you sound too heavy. Your sound is too heavy. You should lose some weight.
Wow.
Yeah. Like that, like no joke. That's literally what he would tell her. Basically, you sound like a fat American is what he was telling her.
Fuck,
dude. Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, man. It's like there were some people who were brutal.
Man,
there were some people who were tough. And I had an experience with my own teacher, Duncan, who was there for a time. He was like one of the greatest bass players in the world. I was practicing 6 hours a day, and he looked me dead in the eye and called me lazy.
Wow.
I will never forget that. And I will never, ever do that to one of my students.
Do you think that's a kind of thing like the movie Whiplash? You ever see that movie?
I've been meaning to see it, but I actually haven't seen it.
Well, it's just basically like a teacher, he's a jazz director, and he has this drummer, and he's so hard on these kids. And to his credit, it's about finding the next Coltrane. It's about finding the next Miles, the people that can really hack it and weeding out the soft from the hard.
Yeah. And that's part of it, and that's part of the reason why teachers
more like a mental exercise.
Yeah, they're trying in a lot of ways. Teachers at these conservatories are trying to toughen you up. Because the reality is that
there's no second place medal in any of this.
No, there's not. And the reality is that anything you hear from your teachers, if you read reviews, you're probably going to read worse in reviews. If somebody doesn't like your playing, then
right.
Or if somebody's critical of your playing in a review, like that hurts, and that's also worse than what your teacher is going to tell you.
How did that affect? Like, were you just pissed off? Did you, what was your reaction to that?
My reaction was because I took a walk. It was like January, I think, it was February. It was like dead of winter. So I took a walk. The school is right by Regent's Park, which is one of these big parks in London. Mm-hmm. So I just put my bass away, and it was one of those things. Like I was close to crying. Because I was working so hard.
Yeah, of course.
I was working so hard on this bass concerto, the Bottesini second bass concerto, and I had to play the opening measure, just that one measure, for I want to say 3 lessons in a row, just that measure. So this is 3 hours of lessons on one measure.
Wow.
And I just couldn't get it right. Or at least I couldn't satisfy my teacher. Mm-hmm. So I just went and took a long, cold walk around the park. And I just walked, and I just thought and cleared my head, and I was just like, I got to be away from everybody. Mm-hmm. So I took some time, and, I just sat in the, the cold, gray London winter, and mm-hmm. I sat there and kind of stewed for a little bit. Then I came back, and I got back to work.
Yeah.
And I said, this is, that's life. You know,
Yeah.
you got to do better. You got to work harder.
Yeah, I'm not letting this measure ruin my time.
No, this isn't going to defeat me.
Right.
So, I got back to work and I ended up learning it, and I never really fully satisfied my teacher, because like that's not their job is to push you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I ended up going back and learning the piece, and I ended up playing it for a recital. I ended up going fine and everything, and it was one of those moments where it's like that was where it went a little too far.
Right.
Like where it wasn't like he's just trying to toughen you up. That was, to me, that crossed the line into cruelty.
That was an attack on your character. That was an attack on like you as a that was an attack on your pursuit of your dream.
Yeah, exactly. And when excuse me,
I don't think any teacher should ever do that. I had an experience like that at Berkeley where oddly enough he was a bass player, but he was an ensemble teacher. Won't mention his name, but he, you're there to learn. You're there to learn, and you're there to, you're gonna fail. No one's perfect there. But I was going in, and we were playing, and he just stopped everything and kind of like tried to embarrass me in front of the rest of the ensemble. So dude. we're playing a groove, and he's doing everything he can. He's playing all the all the offbeats. He's trying to fuck me up in front of everybody else, and I'm like, dude, just tell me what I should do to fix this, because it was a tempo thing. I was having trouble with my tempo, and I was rushing. I had a tendency to rush, which sometimes I still do, and it's something I need to work on. But I just remember being like, man, that didn't feel right.
Yeah,
like,
when somebody's like, it's like they're gunning for you, and it's like they're trying to cut you down a notch.
Right. I have no problem with a teacher calling me out on something that I'm not doing right, and then I need to figure it out, because that's something you need to have together. I understand that, and I respond well to that. I do not respond well to someone trying to embarrass me.
Yeah,
it makes me want to get up and punch them in the face.
Oh, dude, I know.
And I came close.
I believe it. Yeah.
So it was just like, this is not the way that anyone learns. So
yeah.
That was my experience.
You got to find a different way. I mean, if you're a teacher, I mean, like getting to that point where if it's starting to feel abusive, like don't, maybe don't go down that road.
It's like sometimes I don't feel good about, you're like a little embarrassed, or if you're not prepared for your lesson or whatever, you're going to go kind of with your head down a bit.
Yeah, and then you kind of deserve it,
and you definitely deserve it. You
for
absolutely deserve it.
Showing up not practiced, or if your teacher gave you an assignment and you didn't do it, it's like any other class. You show up not having done your homework, like
exactly.
You don't deserve a banana sticker.
Exactly. So you totally deserve it in that scenario, but like if you're playing and you just don't have this thing, like, and you're gonna like literally take me through the motions of like playing, and you're trying to mess with me, and it's just like trying to embarrass me. That's not right. But.
Oh yeah, dude. We had so I remember I had a master class with this guy. I don't know if I should say his name. I mean, it was I learned a lot. But he was the principal bass of the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra at the time, and this guy was he's just a monster player, absolute monster, and he was also a boxer.
Really?
Yeah, he was a tough dude. And it's funny,
it's
like
an interesting combination.
Yeah. But like the thing is, he talked shit like a boxer.
Okay.
Like he talked a lot of smack. And like he had a swag. And it's funny, if you saw his hands, like his knuckles were all flat from like from punching people in the face. Yeah. But the thing is, he had that swagger where A, he is a top tier orchestral musician, so he's one of the best musicians in the world, and B, he could take anybody in the room.
Right.
So this dude was just like a baller on all levels.
Yeah.
But we had he was notorious for messing with people. And on our we had a mock audition for him, and he made it a point to mess with each one of us in some way. Like, so what he would have us do is he would give us the list of excerpts, and it was pretty specific, but it was a little vague. And what he would do is he would ask us to play the excerpt, then he would say, "Okay, go on." What do you mean? Like, no, there's the whole rest of the symphony. You have to play the rest of it. And it's like, but you didn't tell me to prepare that. And he's like, "Oh, you don't know the symphony? What? You don't know it by heart? Get out." You know, I remember I was playing
Unbelievable.
the because he told us to prepare a really specific excerpt from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. There's this big recitative where it's like the basses and cellos have this big long solo, and then after that it goes into the Ode to Joy theme, the famous da 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 that and he told us only to prepare the recitative, not the Ode to Joy.
Yeah.
So I play. And I play like I nailed the recitative. Like I just absolutely shredded it. Then he goes, "Okay, go on." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "It keeps going." I was like, "Oh!" And then I started on the wrong note. And he goes, "You don't know this." I said, "No." I know this." He goes, "Obviously you don't. You played on the wrong note."
Yeah.
He goes, "You started on the wrong note. You don't know this."
Right.
You know, and but his thing was just like, you know, that was like weeding out, because at least we knew he was going to do that, you know.
Well, it sets an expectation that you need to go above and beyond and learn, and like, yeah, you should have had the Ode to Joy together.
I should have expected it, or I should have at least been able to go on without question. You know, I should have been able to go on and not have it throw me for a loop. You know, that was the lesson there.
Right.
Because after
it's a great lesson to learn.
Yeah, and after and everybody had to audition, and you know, had to have this mock audition for him. But afterwards, he gave us all feedback, and you know, he was pretty blunt with his feedback. You know, if you played out of tune, he said, "Yeah, you know, you were out of tune. You can't do that in an audition. You can't play out of tune."
Right.
I remember he told one young woman, he said, "You sound like a girl." He said, "Yeah, I know,
Whoa.
right?" But he goes, the way he put it was like, "I don't want to be able to tell that it's a man or a woman playing the bass. I just want to hear a bassist."
Right.
You know, and I was like,
you want to hear the music.
Right, exactly. And it's like, okay, a little sexist, but it's like, I see where you're coming from. You don't want to, you want everything to be there, and you don't want it to sound
well, because you
individual.
need to be able to have the full range of what's the right way to say this?
Full range of expression.
I guess so.
Yep.
Yeah, like you don't want things, and not that like a woman playing. I feel like what he was getting at is it sounds fragile to me.
Yeah, that's ultimately what he meant, but because it was a woman, he said,
a man,
"You sound like a girl."
Yeah, but a man could also sound like that too. So it's like,
but he probably would have used a different word if it was a man.
Yeah,
you know, he probably would have said, "Oh, that's, you know, you didn't make enough sound, or you sounded a little weak."
Right.
But instead, he chose to pick on this girl for her gender, which is like, dude, it's messed up.
Yeah.
But again, the point he was getting at is just like, maybe you could illustrate that a different way. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it's it's a really interesting place to be, these conservatories, because it's a really high pressure environment, and there's just a lot of changing that you have to do, and there's a lot of work that you have to do while you're there, and then you get out. It's all different. It's all different. Everything you learned is like, now you're doing like totally different stuff. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like,
how many did you audition for symphonies after you got out of college? Like, what was your path and kind of journey after that?
Yeah, so I got home, and I was like, yeah, I would love to still practice 6-7 hours a day, but I kind of need money.
Yeah.
I kind of need a job. So I didn't really have a ton of gigs lined up, because I came back home and I was away for 2 years. And, the only people that knew that I was around were people that I was playing with before. So it was like community orchestras and stuff like that. So they were, they wanted me to come play with them. And I kind of didn't want to do the community orchestra thing.
Right.
So I come back and I actually started working at 7 Stars Bakery. And,
best place ever.
Yeah, dude, I loved that job. I loved it. I got back, it was like no responsibility at all. I was just like brewing coffee and handing people muffins. It was great. Like people would walk in like all grumpy, and then you give them coffee and they're smiling. Like
yes.
Oh, dude, it's like I loved that job. And also I really liked working for that company, because they treated their employees well. Or at least I thought they treated their employees well. And we got tons of, dude. I got so addicted to coffee. It's funny, because like it's really good coffee there, and we could get it for free.
Yeah.
So I was drinking like way too much coffee, probably 8 to 10 cups a day. It was crazy.
8 to 10 cups of coffee a day?
Probably, because I would drink big iced coffees, and I would drink like, sometimes 3 or 4 of those, and a big large iced coffee is, really 2 or 3 cups of coffee in that.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a lot of coffee.
Oh, yeah. So I was like, a sweaty, jittery mess.
Like, what would you like on your bagel?
Give me my sweat rag. Mop me up, Scotty. It was disgusting, But no, so I get back from school and I have to, I need money. So I work at 7 Stars. And, there aren't really that many auditions that happen. Mm-hmm. So I have an audition for, my first one was the New Bedford Symphony Orchestra. So I auditioned for them. It was for their principal bass position. And this was like 5 years ago now. And I got to the final round, and it was me and this one other guy, and I was the runner-up. So they gave the position to this other guy, and I was, high up on the sub list. Basically, they called me whenever they had a concert.
Right.
And having been high up on the sub list, if the principal couldn't make it, they had me sit guest principal with them. So I've been sort of, for a while, I sat like, guest principal bass, assistant principal bass, and then their actual assistant principal bass, he left, and then I kind of filled in for him for a while. So now I've got kind of like a long-term sub contract with them. And I've done some other auditions for some other local orchestras that have gotten me pretty close, but auditioning, and this is the thing that sucks for me being a classical musician, is I'm a bad auditioner. Mm-hmm. I'm really bad at auditioning because it's just so unnatural. Like you have to play this tiny little fragment of a whole piece in dead silence behind a curtain, and you have to play it perfectly.
That's the most interesting thing that, because we were talking about this before. You're literally like in a room, quiet, dark room, probably.
Yeah.
And there's no one but you. And it's like, does someone tell you, okay, go ahead, or something like that?
Yes, a lot of the time it's different at every audition. So sometimes so screened auditions, for anybody who's listening, screened auditions are a thing in the classical world when you have to sit down with your instrument, and the audition panel is usually 3 or 4 people that are listening to you. They're behind a curtain. The reason why is because they want to only be using their ears. Yeah. So what they're trying to avoid is any appearance of discrimination.
So do you have
whatsoever.
like a number or something?
Yeah, so you'll be like number 11, or something. And so what happens is somebody, so this is, man, it's kind of interesting. So I just took one of these auditions last night. So last night, and this is not uncommon, all of the bass players are in one big room, all warming up together. So you're listening to everybody else play. Yeah. And either people are psyching themselves out, or they're psyching you out, or everybody's just playing and practicing. And even though you're not, I mean, you're listening. Everybody's listening, and they're listening to you. So everybody's warming up and everybody's tuning and going through their excerpts. And, it's like, you think like, oh, that guy sounds great. Oh man, I'm screwed, or like, oh, well, why is he here? Like, that doesn't sound very good. Yeah. And it's like, you have these, you just hear what you hear. So then they say that there's somebody in the room with you. There's like a proctor in the room with you. He gets you and says, all right, it's your turn. Let's go up. They walk you into the room. And then usually there's a second person that's sitting with you. And in the case of last night's audition, they said, okay, there are 4 excerpts we're going to play in the first round. And usually what you'll do is when you sit down, the panel will ask you for one of those 4 excerpts. Last night, they didn't. So I just sat down, and then it was just silence. And I'm just like looking at the person behind me, and she was like, oh, anytime you're ready. I'm like, and the thing is,
I wish someone would have said something.
And the thing is, in a screened audition, you cannot make any noise that alludes to your gender. So I couldn't speak. Yeah. So I couldn't say, oh, okay, thank you. Yeah. I couldn't be like, oh, are we starting right now? Or what are we starting with? I couldn't
give a nod.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you have to sit down and like, you kind of have to look and point with the bow at like the page. And she's like, oh yeah, anytime you can play.
Scary.
So you sit down and it's just dead silence. And you have to play this little tiny chunk absolutely perfectly. And it's like, it's usually very demanding. And even if you've been warming up, you feel a little cold because you sit down and you got to you don't get to play a few notes before you play the excerpt. You have to play right away.
Right.
So of course, last night I sit down and there's this famous trio from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony that's like this massive excerpt. All like classical bassists know this excerpt, and I've played it hundreds, thousands of times I've played this excerpt. And it's one of the ones I know off the top of my head, like back of my hand, upside down, backwards, left, right.
Right.
Of course I get into the audition. All of the other stuff that I was concerned with about like practicing and, I can't screw this up, I played that pretty well. The one thing that I was like, I know this really well, screwed it up.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was just, and that, that happens. That's one of those weird things that why auditions feel so unnatural, because you're not really making music on auditions. You're just, you're trying to play perfectly, but that's not quite possible, at least not for me. And that's why I'm such a bad auditioner. But what I prefer to do is auditions are something that you have to take as a musician. It's just part of, doing the classical thing.
Yeah.
But what I like to do is recitals and solo work and teaching, so that's kind of what I'm putting most of my work into. Like last March, I did that. I mentioned earlier that I did a concerto with an orchestra, and I was doing a whole bunch of practice for that. That for me was a lot of fun, because you can, it's a lot of pressure because you're the soloist, whatever, but you can really create.
Right.
You pick the piece of music that you want to play, and luckily I found a piece of music that I was really psyched about, really excited to play, a really obscure bass concerto that I was like, oh, nobody knows this? Cool. The hipster in me was coming out. So I knew this before it was cool. And so I got to pick a piece that I was really passionate about, and I got to practice it my way, and I got to do everything kind of the way I wanted.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that felt really rewarding. That was great.
So if you're doing solo stuff, is that kind of the only outlet towards that? Like, what other kind of things would you do?
As a bassist, there's not a ton, because it's not like there's a ton of bass concertos, and it's not like when orchestras are looking to hire soloists, they're going to be looking for bassists. Most orchestras, because there's so many of them, they're going to be looking for violinists and pianists and maybe cellists and maybe trumpet players or something. Anything like where there's kind of a lot of them around, because you'll be able to find them. And also, there's a lot of good music. Like Beethoven wrote violin concertos. He did not write any bass concertos.
You're right. Yeah.
So, the good music is most of the time it's for the upper instruments.
Right.
But what you can do, the other half of that coin, is that you can do anything you want. You can set up your own personal recital, play all the music you want. You can pick any composer you want and play whatever music with any accompanist that you want. That's the great thing about freelancing now, is that I can hire whatever pianist I want to work with, one of my friends or somebody that I just want to experiment with, or I can play music that nobody's ever heard before, and music that I just want to nerd out on.
Would you, so I guess for just more work opportunity stuff, would you play, or have you done wedding stuff where you would have a classical quartet or something like that?
Yeah. So bassists. So the string quartet,
probably not the most string quartet. Yeah, it's probably not the most glamorous thing in the world, but
honestly,
I can imagine that you can get creative with the pieces, other than walking down the aisle and stuff like that. But
the thing with bass and playing in a wedding is that the string quartet doesn't include upright bass. So it's violin, viola, and cello.
Yeah, cello.
So I'm not, I won't play in any string quartet. I mean, I've played in string ensembles at weddings and everything.
But you could create one. You could create your own kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as weddings go, I play in bands. So it's
true.
I play with Nikki Luparelli. I play with her, and we do some weddings with her. And honestly, I love playing weddings. The joy, the happiness.
Everyone's so happy.
Yeah, everybody's happy. Everybody's dancing. Everybody's drinking. It's you're playing their favorite songs. It's the best. It's one of the best gigs.
Right.
There's so much to be happy about when you're playing. Really, I mean, and this is so cheesy, I know, but there's so much to be happy about playing any kind of music, especially if you're getting paid for it.
Right.
If you can make a living playing and working with music, it's just for me, there's nothing better, because that's the only thing I've ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
Is music,
Man, I think that's a pretty good spot to end it right there.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Great.
Well, before we go, give me some words backwards. Refrigerator.
Rotary Deerfield.
West Elm.
Let's go.
Bass.
Sabe.
What else we got? Apartment.
Tnim Trappa.
All right. Well, I'm expecting all of you to go and fact check those. And Joe, thanks, man.
Dude, thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate
This
you
was a
being
pleasure.
my first interview in this apartment, and I appreciate you being a great friend for so long.
Likewise, Jesse. Same here.
Used to be the kind of man who didn't leave much up to chance. Sometimes life has funny ways of showing you the things you'll never know. So trace the calls and phone the bars, but they're not looking very hard. The first and second nights were cold, but now this whole routine is getting old. So where do you go? Where do you go? Where do you go when the lights go out and the bars close down? Where do you go? Where do you go? I built these walls for the both of us. Where do you go? Where do you go? Headlights pass the road again. The animals are turning in. The bulls are on their radios. You turn up just as it starts to snow. Please don't tell another lie. The phone's been working here all night. What you think your daughters say when